All right, well, welcome. Thanks for coming. So just to introductions, I'm Brad Mandel, City of Bend, Assistant Building Official. I supervise the building inspectors, and I've been here for about 19 years. So I'll introduce some of the other people here. Pauline Hardy from City of Bend is senior planner, and she's the specialist on House Bill 2001, Senate Bill 458. So any super technical questions she's going to talk about. My presentation is kind of designed to address how that relates to building code requirements. So Aaron Yuma from City of Redmond, building official. Joe McClay from City of Bend, building official. Jay Denny is in the front. He's the plans examiner, assistant building official. We split the ABO duties. Katie McKenzie is our program coordinator. She's kind of running stuff on the online portion there. Lisa from IT is helping out. And Andrina is and I don't know if we have any other jurisdictional people here, but I'd see some of our staff, so welcome. So let me, I guess please keep your mics. If we are broadcasting this, so I should let everybody know it's being recorded. And then we're planning on posting it on like the city website with a YouTube link or something, so you can go back and revisit it. But we are broadcasting on Teams Live right now, so if you're watching from home, please leave your mic muted. We will have a question and answer period at the end of this. That's kind of why we've got these guys up here to hopefully answer questions about anything that I don't cover that might be more jurisdictional. So if you can keep questions to a minimum during the presentation, I don't mind if you want to raise your hand and get clarification on something, but if we can, just try and hold them till the end. Same with people listening online, you can raise your hand and Katie will let me know that there's a question, and you can also put questions in chat and she can read those off. So, but if at all possible, just keep until the end and we'll do the questions then. So any questions on that? Okay. Please turn off your cell phones or silence them. Handouts. I have a couple handouts up front. One of them is just a slide from the presentation that's meant to be kind of a summary, a quick go-to of the different types of dwellings and what code you can go under. And then the other one is a handout that we put together to address the utilities and some of the fire life safety issues of duplexes and ADUs. So feel free to take those if they run out. Sign your name on the sign-in sheet, and we will probably send out this presentation. And I didn't think of what else I was gonna. Oh, if there's any questions that we need to research and kind of get back to you, we'll send those to everybody too that gets their name on the sign-up sheet. So, okay. That's it. So I have a business card on there if you want to contact me later about any questions. So I'll get started. So this is based on the 2021 residential code that went into effect about a year ago. This is an ongoing presentation that I kind of keep adding to, so hopefully none of the older slides have older code references. I tried to catch them all, but if you notice code reference, that's kind of weird. That's probably what happened. Is it's a 2017. So. Maybe it went dormant. Having technical difficulties with the slide mover. Yes. Is it not going to work? Oh, we can try that other one too. Oh, okay. Just the scope of what the residential code covers is 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses and their accessory structures. So everything else is going to be regulated out of the commercial code. Oh, we got the next one. All right. So House Bill 2001, this is a code that's been in effect, or it's been adopted by the city since November. The state mandated a bunch of things that larger cities had to adopt into their Bend code, and Bend was one of the first ones to meet that, and they changed some requirements to exceed what the minimums were too. So one of the effects of that was that attached and detached ADUs are allowed on almost all residential lots now. And that if your lot is big enough, then you can have a 3-plex or a 4-plex. And I'll kind of talk about the differences of planning's terms of a 3-plex and a 4-plex versus building code. So if you want more details on that, City of Bend has a HB 2001 section on the website. Oh, is it just lagging a little bit? Okay. So let's see. So these are the definitions out of the building code. A dwelling is any building that is basically meant to be lived in. So if you're going to use it for rentals, leasing, letting, they're trying to cover every basic thing that you can do and say that, you can't say, oh, I'm just renting it. So that's what a dwelling is, and it's 1 or 2 dwelling units. And a dwelling unit is a single unit that provides complete independent living for 1 or more persons, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. So this is the important part of a dwelling unit, is that for building code, if you want to call it a dwelling unit, then it has to have all those things. So you need a kitchen, you need a bathroom, you need a livable room, which is, they've stepped that back a little bit. It used to be 120 square feet. Now it's a 70 square foot open room minimum. So if you're doing tiny home code, you still need a 70 square foot room in there. And then any habitable room, like a bedroom, is supposed to have at least a 7-foot dimension. So, townhouses. This is any, and the definition is critical on this too. It's a single dwelling unit constructed in a group of 3 or more, in which each extends from the foundation to the roof. So it always has to be a vertical. You can't stack townhouses. You can't have part of them go over the top of another one. So it's always going to be a straight vertical separation. And then it has to have access to a yard or public way on not less than 2 sides. So you used to always think of this as kind of front and back, that you could do a whole row of houses and they'll have a front and back. But I think under the, people may want to be doing a fourplex and put row house separation so you could cross them, and then you still have it open on 2 sides of every one of those. So accessory structure, this is just structures that aren't the main dwelling unit, but are part of the, they're accessory to the main dwelling. So that would be like your sheds, garages. You could have a casita. You can have a detached living structure, but in the city of Bend, the planning code is going to call that a dwelling unit if you put certain things in there, like a full bathroom or kitchen sink or kitchen. So it is possible to have a detached living structure and not be a full dwelling unit. So. Well, I guess you guys can't see me anyway, so I could probably stand over here. So 2 attached dwelling units. This slide is meant to cover all the 2 dwelling unit situations that you can have. So you can have 2 attached dwelling units on 1 tax lot with no property line between them. That's typically called a duplex. That's also the same thing as an ADU in building code. We don't have an ADU in building code. We just have dwelling units. So it doesn't really matter how big it is in comparison to the other dwelling. So if you have 2 dwelling units on 1 lot that are attached, that's a duplex, or a two-family dwelling, which is regulated out of 3023. So if it's a townhouse, then it's regulated out of 3022. And it needs to, let's see. No, that's the structurally independent part is if you could have 2 dwelling units or two family dwelling units next to each other, like 2 duplexes separated by a property line, so that you have 4 units. I think that's where I went with the structurally independent. Oh, yeah. So if you want to go like with a 0 lot line situation, as long as it's structurally independent, you can do that with the requirements of R302, R3012. That doesn't sound right. I think that's 3021. R3021 that requires the table we'll see later, but it's 1 hour wall with no openings and no eaves. So. Okay, so two attached dwelling units. The code was kind of silent on what that was if you had a lot line between them. And in talking to the state, this may change in the new code that comes out in a year for residential. But for right now, they added this code section in the last code that said you can either regulate it as a townhouse, use the townhouse provisions, even though townhouse says 3 or more units. You can do just 2 connected units if there's a property line between them, and use those provisions. And then the other option was the 0 lot line ones, which is a lot more restrictive. That's 2 separate 1 hour walls next to each other that are structurally independent. Little more difficult to build because you usually have to do it in stages of inside gypsum, outside gypsum. So. And one note I put on that one is if you use that 0 lot line, I'm calling it 0 lot line, but it's basically anything less than 3 feet from the property line to your exterior wall. It's going to be a fire rated wall that cannot have penetrations and all those requirements. And if you do that, you can't have projections within 2 feet of the property line. So that's what the townhouse code kind of does for you, is it allows you to have eaves and things that project over the property line. So 3 or more units that are attached. The only way you're going to stay in the residential code with that is to do townhouses. Once you get to 3 attached units, that pushes you into commercial code. So in townhouses, you can go as many as you want. You just have to meet the provisions of 3022 about vertical separation and separation of utilities and things like that we'll talk about a little bit later. For that, so 4 or more units. This is the only thing that comes into play on that is that you'll have to do accessibility requirements, and that doesn't really matter if you're in the commercial code or the residential. If you have 4 or more attached, the residential will push you to the commercial for the accessibility. You've probably seen some houses being built that are like 4 townhouses in a row, and they're not meeting accessibility, and that's because one of the exceptions is if it's 2-story, that they don't have to meet accessibility. So that covers that. Okay, so the next few slides I was going to have Pauline address, and I don't know if this is one of your presentations or just.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you want to go forward, I'll let you
Okay.
do that. Okay, so as Brad mentioned, there's 2 laws that have passed. One was House Bill 2001, and that created the middle housing that can be allowed on any residential lot. So we're talking from the planning perspective and Bend Development Code, duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, as well as the townhomes. And then after House Bill 2001 was implemented, and the goal of House Bill 2001 was really to allow these middle housing on residential lots for rental purposes to, provide more needed housing in the city of Bend. Senate Bill 458 takes it a step further to provide home ownership opportunities. So now you can have the duplex, triplex, or quad on a residential lot. And then Senate Bill 458 lets you do a expedited land division so that each of those units are on their own lot. So instead of just having 4 units on one lot, you can build a quadplex and then put each unit on its own lot. So as you see in the picture up on the screen, that's an example of a triplex. So what planning does now is someone will submit a application to build a triplex. So we'll review that triplex on what we call the parent property. And then they can either go concurrently or afterwards and come in for the expedited land division and go through a land division process so that each of those units are now on their own lot. And we won't be reviewing each of those units on their own lot to setbacks or anything like that, because we reviewed that triplex in the very beginning on the parent site. So Senate Bill 458 only for Bend's purposes applies to the duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, because townhouses are already on their own lots. You can go to the next slide, Brad. So in the Bend Development Code in Chapter 4.3, we recently adopted the requirements consistent with what the state told us to do with Senate Bill 458. When you go through this land division and you put each unit on its own lot, you can't come in later and then add an accessory dwelling unit. So once you do the land division, and I'll keep using a quadplex, for example, you can only have 1 unit on the resulting lots. You do have to provide separate utilities to each of those units. So if you do a regular quadplex on one lot, you do 1 utility service. But once you go through this land division, we want to make sure each unit now has their own water and sewer hookups. And the state said we can actually provide easements because those utilities are going to cross property lines in several cases. So we are allowed to ask for easements for the utilities If there happens to be a driveway or parking areas, we can require easements for that. And through House Bill 2001, we have very minimal parking requirements. So there may not be parking for these units. So then we wouldn't be able to come back later through the land division and say, oh, now we want parking. Building code, when a applicant submits to put the middle housing on the property and go through the expedited land division, they need to submit a letter to the planning department as part of their application showing how these units will now meet the building code and the Oregon Residential Specialty Code, because you're now putting lot lines where there were no lot lines close to these new middle housing dwelling units. So we need that letter to verify that they meet all the building code requirements. And then the street frontage and right of way, we can require frontage improvements through the land division. So if there's no sidewalk, for example, we can require sidewalk. And if the street's not wide enough, we can ask for dedication for additional right of way. Next slide, please. So what we cannot require through this expedited land division process is that each of those new units front a street. So you're going to see landlocked parcels. That's why the easements are really important. We can't require any additional parking or driveway access for each of the units because we reviewed that in the very beginning when they came in to apply for quadplex on its own lot or any type of middle housing on its own lot. We can't, I mean, you could come in and do this and put each of those units on like 1,000 square foot lot if you wanted to, because they're not reviewing lot size either through the expedited land division process. And we can't require anything really other than what was on the previous slide. So again, you come in, you apply for your middle housing on a parent site, and then after that, you can do the Senate Bill 458 land division and put each of those units on their own lot. Next slide, please. One thing I just want to bring to your attention, I've been working with Brad, Jay, and Joe on working. So when I talk about when you come in for the Senate Bill 458 application, you have to demonstrate that the building meets all applicable Oregon Residential Specialty Code and building codes. We originally put in that it had to be prepared by a design professional licensed in the state of Oregon to submit this letter. In a lot of cases, it doesn't need to be provided by that design professional. So the underlined part is in a proposed code update that I'm working on that should hopefully be adopted by either the end of the year or early next year, so that if the building or the new dwelling units on each lot are at least 3 feet away from any of the new proposed lot lines, they're going to meet the building code. So we're not going to require that letter to be submitted by a design professional or licensed in the state of Oregon. You still have to submit the letter, but it doesn't have to be by a licensed design professional. And then these are 2 unique submittal requirements if you do go through this process. And the other submittal requirement is just you have to show the separate utilities to each lot. Other than that, you would look at the submittal requirements for a typical land division. These are just unique because of the type of lots that we're creating for the middle housing. And I think that that was it.
Sure.
Yep.
Oh,
So go back 1, and it's yours, Brad.
thank you, Pauline. Is that my next slide?
Yep.
Okay. Right. So the very beginning of 302 talks about the fire resistant construction. That's kind of what the basis of this presentation is. So there is a table that tells you that you have to be 3 feet from the fire separation line. So, and that will regulate that fire separation line can either be an actual lot line or it can be a chosen one. So for whatever works best for a project. Jumping all over. So let me see, I'll just read what it says. Where multiple detached dwellings are detached, I got that twice, are located on a single lot, each attached dwelling shall be independently comply with 3021. So that's just part of the slides that I'll show later. You can have a big lot with a bunch of different dwellings on it, and they get looked at individually for building code. For planning code, you know, you have a certain number of lots or a certain number of buildings you can put on that lot. But for us, we look at each individual structure. So if it's attached, then, you know, you count up the number of dwelling units, and that will drive you to what code you have to go to. So if you had 3 units on one lot that were attached and 1 that was detached, that 1 could be out of the residential code, but those 3 are going to be a commercial code. I don't know if any of this is too important to, it just talks about the exceptions to those, the requirements of the table. So we'll see if we can, I think the next slide is the table. Okay. So next one. Yeah. So this is table R3021. So what it says, if you look over on the far right there, fire separation distance provided. So people will confuse this with how far it is between structures, and that's not what it is. It's how far it is to the fire separation distance line. So there's a definition coming later of what that is. But if you are less than 3 feet from that, and that's typically going to be a line between 2 structures. So to not have to have any fire rating, you need to be 6 feet away from each other, because that line is going to be in the middle of the 2. So if you're less than 3 feet to that line that you determine, then you need a 1-hour wall. And same with down there, openings, and an opening is your doors, windows, vents, all those things are openings in the wall. It says not allowed less than 3 feet. So penetration, same thing, not allowed less than 3 feet, or it needs to comply with, which is going to be fire stopping or a fire assembly. And projections, this one is pretty common one that we run into. If you're going off of this table, which is basically everything other than a townhouse, as close as you can get to that line is 2 feet. You're not supposed to project anything closer to that. The new code did specify that decks that are over 30 inches above grade are also considered projections. So this is something you might run into if you have a 5-foot setback from the property line, and you build a 3-foot wide stairway deck on the side of the building going down. That's going to now be within 3 feet of the property line. So it would need to be fire rated. So, well, no, I say that if you build a 3 feet wide, you have a 5-foot setback, you're within 2 foot, you're at the 2-foot line, so you should be fine. But if you're doing a 3-foot setback, which the new code will allow, then you're going to be right up to the property line with a deck. So that would need to be 1 hour rated, which is like heavy timber or I think non-combustible and a 1 hour firewall inside of it. So you can have, if it's below 30 inches, it falls under the exemption of just being a landing outside. And those, the exception says that it's not considered a projection. So then you could go right up to the property line with a deck that's, you know, a foot or 2 off the ground. Oh, you got it. So fire separation distance, that was the column at the end that I was talking about. So the code definition in Chapter 2 of the residential code gives you these three options for what that distance is. So it's either to the lot line, which will be if you're doing 458, you're drawing a new lot line at some point, so it's to that line. If it's to the center line of the street, alley, or public way, so that usually doesn't come into effect much with fire rating for the building department, but like front setbacks to streets and things are more planning code issue. And then the third one that we see a lot is the imaginary line between two buildings on a lot. So, but it's really between all buildings on the lot, all detached buildings. You need to determine where you want this imaginary line. So if you have two buildings that are 3 foot away from each other, you can put that line right on the face of one of the buildings, and that one just has to be fire rated. And then the other one is now 3 feet away, so it can meet the normal code of having a eave and not being fire rated. So this was and forgive my drawings, I'm not a drafter. So this is my picture of an imaginary line on one property. So in this case, I think we got ahead of the definitions, but that distance is measured perpendicular from the face of the building to that line. So all those little green guys are the perpendicular measurement of the setback. So in this picture, you can see that this building is 3 feet from that line, so it doesn't need to be fire rated. This wall is 3 feet, so it doesn't need to be fire rated, but this one is 2 foot, so it would need to be a 1 hour wall, and it can't have any projections.
Actually, on the 3 foot, what the keeps can go in.
That's what I mean by the projections. Yeah, so if you're at 3 feet, then you can go within 2 foot of the fire separation distance. So that gives you 1 foot of eave. Yeah, if you had a 4 foot setback, you could go 2 foot eave.
Basically, house with 1 foot eave, house with
4 feet.
1 foot.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay, so this was just kind of my picture, and we actually just had something very similar to this submitted, which is kind of becoming an infrastructure question of how to do the inspections and whatnot, because you have to get utilities to each of these buildings without crossing each other. But if this is one tax lot, building is going to look at each of those structures individually. So I don't know if I say anything else. Yeah. So we look at each building's fire separation distance to the other buildings. So a person could do that many duplexes, like if those are duplexes, all those buildings could still stay in the residential code even if it's on one lot. This is the flyer that the handout that's on the table if anybody wants, but it was meant to be just kind of a quick reference of what you can do. I put the little 2+ in parentheses up there because if you have a bunch of detached dwellings or ADUs on one property, you can basically do as many as you want and still stay in those requirements of setbacks and 458 land divisions. Utilities isn't a big deal. But then the other one, and if you notice the first 2 columns, one says detached ADU, the other one says attached ADU. So if it's an attached ADU, it's the same as a duplex and a 2-family dwelling, and it's regulated out of R3023. And this is all on one lot, this table. Townhouses can be on one lot. You can use townhouse separations and still you would stay in the residential code, and you don't have to have property lines. So you could have 6 townhouses on one lot and build out of R3022. So you just may have issues with accessibility if you're if you've got 4 or more and they're not 2-story. Triplexes on one lot that are not a townhouse is going to be commercial code. And I'm not really going to cover commercial code in this presentation. And then quadplexes on one lot that aren't townhouses are going to need accessibility and commercial code. And both commercial codes are going to require fire sprinklers. So.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real fast. So I just want to be real clear that when he's talking about single family ADUs, duplexes, triplexes, and quads, the building code is looking at very differently than how the planning code defines it. So if you're looking at doing a quadplex from the development code, that's 4 units on one lot. And it's defined differently than what Brad's talking about when he's talking about it. So if you are looking at doing a quadplex, be sure to check the Bend development code first, and then you can work with Brad on the building side.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Switch these guys. Anyone have a question while we're? Sure. Yes.
Units on one lot. I'm sorry, thank you. A duplex is 2 units on one lot with no property line between, and that allows you to do a 1-hour wall instead of a 2-hour wall, and it doesn't need to be sprinklered. When you want to go more than 2 units on a single lot and not want to sprinkle them, then it's to your advantage to go to the townhome rules. Those require 2-hour walls between each unit. So that adds more cost, but you're also doing away without the required fire sprinkler system, because going to 3 units would kick you into the commercial code. So yeah, there's a difference between a 2-unit duplex and a townhome.
And then townhomes.
Yeah,
Language
yes,
doesn't
they-
necessarily
yeah, you just wouldn't do that unless you were planning on putting a property line between.
Yeah, I mean, you could permit it with a townhome separation on one lot in the, if you thought maybe in the future years, you might do a 458 separation of that lot and put a property line down the middle. That's kind of one thing you're going to run into if you're converting a duplex or trying to convert a single family dwelling to use 458 and create more dwelling units, is that you're going to have a property line going right through the middle of the house, which means you need a townhouse separation which will be a 2-hour wall. Because there's at that point, to beat residential code, which is what 458 says you need to do, you need to have structurally independent, all the way to the foundation separation. So, what's that? With you. Another question?
Yes. So if you're building under the townhome code to get 3 units on one lot, but it's not going to be broke out apart under 458. Basically, we can build a triplex under the townhome code using that rather than going to commercial. That's what you're saying the advantage is.
Yes.
But if we wanted to use 458, it would require 2-hour walls in between.
I won't change it. So if you're going to do 458, they need to be separate single-family dwellings. And the only way to get there is a townhouse separation. Well, that's not true. The other option is 0 lot lines that are structurally independent, but right next to each other, which is a lot harder than the townhouse code to build. But it's the other option. It's no openings, 1-hour firewall right next to another independent 1-hour firewall. So you're talking about like 4 layers of gypsum basically with 2 framed walls. So it's more difficult than what the townhome code will allow, which later slides we'll talk about the different types of firewalls you can use in a townhome.
Okay, I'll wait for that clarification.
Okay.
I would just want to clarify too from the planning code. So if you want, let's use your triplex example. The units from, if you come in and you just apply for a triplex on one parent site, they don't have to be attached. The Ben code allows 3 detached units as long as they're 6 feet apart from each other. Then when you come in to do your Senate Bill 458 land division process, they're all 6 feet apart. And I think that's easier through the building code.
Yeah.
So if you want an easy route, I would not attach them. Right?
That's definitely easier, but that means really small buildings that can fit on a smaller lot, I guess. So, but what you're talking about, you can squeeze it into the lot and just do townhome separations between them. Okay, so this was an example of that. Let's talk really fast. Yeah, isn't that good? Is that the next slide? I'll talk, okay. Okay, so yeah, we can go to the next one. So I just have a few pictures of, structures, and we can talk about the different options that you can do with these. So this could be a triplex with no lot lines on it, and that would be commercial code. You would have to fire sprinkler it, and it would have 1-hour walls between it, and fire partitions, and there's different classifications in the commercial code. You can do a townhouse separation because of the way this is designed, and have 2-hour walls and can't share utilities or anything. That's the other side of townhouses, is that utilities can't cross underneath or through the building at all. So to convert an existing dwelling, you're probably going to want to go commercial to make that into a 3-plex, because otherwise you got to reroute everything to be in its own building. So I think those are the only options with that one. Okay, I'll talk about this one. So this one's kind of interesting. You can see the back behind there that they're connected. So you wouldn't be able to do a R3021 separation, which is just the standard 3-foot setback and 1-foot eave projection, because you would probably be drawing the property line right down the middle of this. So those eaves would be in violation, and you wouldn't be able to have them. So you can do a townhouse because they're connected, and they're not, the townhouse code allows you to have 12-inch eaves. So, and the 12-inch eaves can project over the property line too. So in this situation, and if there's no property line here, this is just a duplex, and all those eaves don't matter. So we did make a determination that in this kind of case, that little corridor you see in there, if those walls are within 6 feet of each other, we want to call that 1 hour walls. Because the intent of the code is that you don't have like windows and stuff looking right at each other and fire being able to jump through there with no firewall. So hope that's somewhat clear. Next one. Okay, so this is one dwelling unit above another dwelling unit. So what happens in this case is you can't use townhouse code because it needs to be vertical. So this is, and it's not 458 eligible because the property lines are, you're not going to be able to get one dwelling unit on the property line in this case, since they're on top of each other. So the only way to do this one is duplex. And a duplex requires a 1 hour floor ceiling assembly, and then all supporting walls of that assembly also need to be 1 hour. Next one. This is a structure that's currently being built right now. This one it's a good way to do it, I guess, is the best way I can say it. Those two walls are 6 feet away from each other. This wall and this wall. So that means short of what's in the middle there, all that stuff can just be normal code. You can have vents in those, you can have eave venting in there. The eave can project, you can basically project up to the property line, but and then that lower section, there is a 2 hour wall going right through the middle of it. So there's just a little nook kind of back there in those garages. You need 4 foot wrap back of fire rated sheathing there and no openings. And then no ventilation would be allowed in no, I'm sorry. You can't have any ventilation in the top of that little structure, but since the barge is running perpendicular to the property line, you are allowed to have bird block venting in there. So that's the only way to really vent that attic is with the lower ventilation. So they're attached structures. I don't know if I don't think planning code cares that much, but they're in the townhouse code. So like that, there's a property line right down the middle, and they can run their eaves right on through. Like I said, it allows you to own one side or the other, and not have much fire rating other than that little. Okay.
I designed that one. Funny. So yeah, that's just storage space in there. It's just gapped exactly for that reason, to meet the 6 foot rule, to create the minimum amount of fire separation between the two units. It's just storage located in that gap. Yeah, it's two 2x6 walls, 1 inch gap. It could be SB 458, but currently it's a duplex.
Well done on the design.
And you get windows on the
Great.
Got one more question.
Yeah,
in the
so
back.
if you didn't hear that, what he said was, since those walls are 6 foot apart from each other up there, you can have windows all along and have as many openings and things and no rated protections and all that. Sure.
Go back on the slide. I don't want to get off topic, but on the left side of this wall.
This little guy here? No, you don't. So there's a definition in there of extending to the exterior wall for duplexes for two unit separation. All right, so these ones are pretty straightforward, I guess. They have 6-foot setbacks, so no real requirements. I think I put this one on there because if you look at the red house there, it has no openings, and the eave is closed off and looks like it's pretty short. So what a person could do there is that could be the lot line right at the face of that eave. And then that would give you the ability to have a little bit more yard for the other person. I think that's the zero lot line situation that we'll be saying or seeing, is that the eave goes right up to the lot line, and then the person owning this like cream colored house could have that whole inside area to themselves. It's their property, instead of splitting it right down the middle. Gives you a 3-foot side yard, which is not terribly useful, especially if you put an air conditioner in there. You're have to hurdle it, I think. So next slide. So this is what you kind of think of, I guess, with big townhouses. You can see they just kept on going down the street. You could build this as a commercial code if it was on one lot. You can do it as townhouses on one lot, or you can have lot lines between every one of them. But you're going to need to meet the separation requirements of townhouses, which is R3022, and each of these needs its own separate service. So what you'll see with utilities in this situation, if it's on, well, either way, I guess if it's on one lot or not, they may put the meters on one side of the building and then go out in an easement and then come into the front of each of the buildings. You can't go underneath it with electrical, gas, any of those, which I've seen people try and do. You're not supposed to share any utilities or have anything running through your neighbor's row house. So, and that kind of goes for property lines or no, doesn't make a difference. You're not supposed to have anything shared. So next one. Okay, these are some of the ADU. I just found this online, just some of the different types of ADUs. So that one up there, standalone detached. I think planning code would call this a duplex or an ADU. Okay. So we still do use the ADU term because it's not always going to be allowed flat out. Oh. Okay, so ADU over a garage. This is one we see quite often. If that garage happens to be connected to the house, or it's the house's garage, then we need a 1 hour separation from that garage to the ADU above. And the supporting structure also needs to be 1 hour. One down below there, that's the attached ADU. That needs a 1 hour wall in it between the two, and then it's supposed to extend up through the attic. In an ADU and duplex 2-family dwelling unit, you don't have to extend through the underfloor. So that's different from the townhouse code.
Actually, as long as the box and the one of the
Between the ADU and the house? Yes. Yeah. You would need the wall and the ceiling. Yeah. Yes, so that's in that handout over there. One of the things is you can have a 60-minute door that's self-closing and gasketed, and that's an ADU situation or two-family dwelling. If there's a property line, no, you can't do that, but you can do it on a two-family dwelling. So the question was, it started off just if you have an ADU that's attached to a dwelling, what is the separation that's required there, which is just the same as a two-family or duplex, just a 1 hour wall. The other is if the building kind of goes over the top of the ADU, where the firewall needs to be. So if you've got structure, living unit above and to the side of the ADU, then the 1 hour wall needs to wrap around the whole thing.
Yeah, so if it's like box again, there's a garage, and that garage into their living room and it goes up into their bedroom, but then there's a unit above the garage that's separated. Then
Okay, oh, well, all right. So then you'd have to rate the whole, because that garage is actually part of the unit that's in front and on tops, but then there's a unit above the garage and they don't have access to that garage. So then you'd have to rate the whole thing, right? Does that make sense?
Let me see if I can. So if you had a garage and you've got an ADU above, you're saying, or
You just draw it sideways. Figure out that. So this is the garage. There's a door. And this is all one unit. And then there's a unit here. So this is one, and this is two. And so this unit, you get into it from outside. And in this unit, you come into your garage, you go into your house, you walk up into your bedroom. So then all of this has to be rated, right? Like those.
is this 1 story?
It's 2 stories.
Okay. Oh, this is the face view of,
This is the side, yeah.
okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. I'm trying to get some civic questions. It's much easier in this.
That? Okay. Yeah, there's a door there or something. So, so you need a garage dwelling separation, which is just gypsum on both sides. The ADU, I guess you're getting to it from the outside. So, you need a 1 hour wall here between the dwelling, and you also need a 1 hour wall there, or 1 hour floor ceiling assembly. And then the walls supporting that need to be 1 hour rated.
Put a door, ADU, second floor between ADU and the dwelling, you can put a door.
Yes. So that's the one that needs to be rated because it is a 1 hour wall. Oh, another
I
question.
have a few questions too. I decided I was going to wait, but I think since we're going on, I should just get them out of the way. Sort of backing up into the Oregon Residential Specialty Code on the definition of a dwelling. Looks like you need 5 things: living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. Cooking and sanitation seem really cut and dry to me. The other ones, like a permanent provision for eating. What would be a permanent provision for eating?
It's not one I've seen that we've made a call on saying you didn't provide eating provisions.
Okay.
So,
And then the same for sleeping? Is it just a
sleeping is
closet?
a bedroom. You have to have a bedroom.
So does that
You
mean
could-
it's a closet? It
you
just
could
needs a
have
closet?
Studio. No, it's a bedroom is a habitable room, meaning it needs to be 7-foot dimension minimum, and it has to have a smoke detectors and egress window.
Okay. And then a lot of ADUs that are going to be probably added and banned in the future here. There's plenty of space in the backyards, but the side yards are tight. So what would be the access requirements if someone sort of has a tight side yard? Is that 3-foot setback including the access, or does, if someone had a fence, as long as the dwelling isn't within that 3-foot access, are they allowed to use that 3-foot space for coming and going from the new ADU?
So the rating of the building is what the 3-foot is going to regulate, firewalls and whatnot. Access, you may have to do with easements or whatever if you're, if you're doing a 458 separation. But typically, access is just a 3-foot wide pathway through a building. So if you're talking about having I don't think we would approve 2-foot along the side of a building to get to the back building. So it's typically 3-foot is the minimum access.
Okay, so it'd be 3 feet as long as they had a 3-foot access along their side.
Yeah, I
Side
think
yard.
so. I mean, I don't know planning code if they have some requirements on width to get to that back unit, but building code wise, yeah, I think that would fly.
Okay.
You just talking ADU, not a Senate Bill 458 separate law. You're
Right,
talking
just the ADU.
Okay.
Okay. The other is about the Senate Bill 458, land division. If multiple properties are involved in this, or where there's going to be splitting a lot line, are neighbors allowed to do easements and combine to be able to like split a duplex? Or does everything have to be common ownership? I guess the situation that I was asked about was, 2 neighbors are sharing a lot line. Neither one of them have the space to do it, but combined they do. So they're like, hey, let's chip in and do a duplex. You're going to get rent on this side. I'll do rent on this side. And we're going to form a new LLC. And we're going to assign easements so we can have a 0 setbacks and split our lot line. I know that's a weird question,
Yeah, I'm not sure
but
if I do.
it got asked to me, so that's why.
But typically, when we do a Senate Bill 458, you have one property. And you would submit for, in this case, sounds like a duplex on the one property. So it sounds like they'd have to do a lot consolidation, make it one property, apply for a duplex on that property. Then they come in and do the Senate Bill 458 land division.
Okay.
Another option, and you can contact me on the side, we have a code section called small dwelling unit developments. So if these are really small lots, you might not even have to go through that process. You can just do 2 units on each lot on, I think it's a minimum, oh, I should know this because I wrote it. It's either 1,200 or 1,500 square foot lots. They're very small. So they may have some other options that would work for them as well.
Thank you.
I just have one question. Is added traffic congestion a consideration on whether these ADUs are approved or not?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, they don't even require parking.
Okay, but just overall, like added traffic to the neighborhood, that's not considered? Okay.
Nope.
That was part of the House bill that they said, don't worry about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They said-
I'd like to ask a question on the Senate bill. So if you have a larger lot and you have an existing house with an existing ADU, now, as I understand it, land division, as it was said, must result in exactly 1 dwelling unit per lot. Does that also count ADUs? So for example, if we have a large lot a house and an ADU. Then we go to build a duplex and then we SB 458 all of it. What happens to the ADU?
So what you have is a large lot with a house and an ADU, and you're adding two more. That's gonna be a quadplex on one lot.
So the ADU basically legally converts from an ADU to,
Right, but you will have to go through a building or planning review and building permit make it a quadplex.
okay,
Get that approved, and then you come in and do the land division so that each unit now is on its own lot.
okay.
So parking, don't kill me, because this was House Bill 2001. An ADU and a duplex require no parking. A triplex does not require parking either. If you did the quadplex, you only required one parking stall for the entire development. Not one per unit, just one per the development. You can provide more, we're not going to say no, but the minimum is one. Yep, just one stall.
Yeah, can we raise hands and then Andrina will bring the thing over just for people that are listening. They're not going to be able to hear you. So,
Oh, and Joe was just saying too, if you do a quadplex, because then it puts you into the commercial code, that one stall has to be accessible.
Per unit.
And I think there's some gray on that.
There's a lot of gray.
So my question about ADU access, like he was talking about before, if you have a house with a 3-car garage, let's say, and it doesn't have enough access point there, but you bust 1-car garage off, can the access to the ADU in the back be through that 1-car garage? If that garage is part of the ADU, like you give them that space as part of the setup, or does it have to be access from the exterior to be able to get to that detached ADU in the backyard?
building code wise, you're saying that now they're
The access
detached
through a
buildings
structure,
and
yeah.
that garage is gone?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you provide a 3-foot wide pathway,
Through a structure?
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So you're saying the front door would be into the garage,
Yeah.
not an actual front door.
Correct. And then the dual detached is ADU. So you can access the detached ADU.
Planning doesn't care, but that sounds more like building.
You're talking about actually going through the building to get,
I'm not building anything.
What's your address?
Right? Yeah. Somebody else look at it. So I have seen where access is provided to an ADU through an additional structure. So it's not accessible from the exterior. You can't get by because they built a shed to the lot line and they got this and that and the other way. So the only way to get to the ADU in the back was through
no,
a garage. Therefore.
no.
No, okay.
So you need a 3068 side hinged front door on any dwelling unit. So,
Well, it is on the ADU.
right, if the unit you're talking about qualifies as a dwelling unit, it needs a door to the exterior that meets those requirements and a pathway to the right of way.
That pathway can't be through.
Right.
And then I want to clarify on the example of the pathway getting to each of the Senate Bill 458 only. But if you do, let's say a quadplex and the front doors are on the back 2 lots and you put pathways down to get to them, the Bend Development Code does require a minimum width of 4 feet, a pedestrian access easement to make sure that they will always have access to their front doors. So the front properties can't just ever say you can't get to your front door anymore. So we're requiring minimum of a 4-foot wide minimum pedestrian access easement over the walkway that gets you to the front doors in the back.
Thank you.
Hi, first off, thank you for this forum. It's awesome. Second, I've got a duplex project that's coming my way, and behind the duplex on an alley will be a 3-car garage. Above the 3-car garage will be an ADU. How many building permits? And assuming the garages and the duplex are separated, am I coming in with 2 building permits to the building department for the ADU and for the duplex and the ADU and garages?
Is that all on one lot?
It's on one lot currently.
Okay, so planning will call that a triplex. You can only have an accessory dwelling unit with a single family detached unit. But if you have 2 units plus an ADU, that's 3 units on one lot. Planning will call that a triplex.
Okay.
And I don't know how many building permits that is, but that's a triplex in the
One
planning board.
building, one structure connected is one permit.
One structure. Okay, so then if I connect the garage and the ADU to the duplex with a walkway, now that they're connected, is that one permit?
Yeah, but now it's a triplex, so you'd be commercial.
That's a triplex on.
Unless you're using townhouse separations, then we individually permit each townhouse.
Okay, so it's a town, coming in as a townhouse.
Yes.
Townhouse. Okay,
If you hit that commercial, it's gonna have to be sprinklered
sprinkler, okay,
if you go commercial code.
okay, all right.
When you say walkway, I envision a covered walkway, so they're connected by a roof.
Yeah, just a roof,
Yep.
just a roof with columns. The one permit, but we're under
Yeah,
the
you bring up a good question. I'm not sure if you use townhouse separations on one lot, we might do that as one permit because you've only got one address for that to track and permit wise. So we probably would do it as one. But when you do townhouses on separate lots, then they're individual. It's still one building that's connected, but it's individual permits because they're each its own tax lot.
Right, okay, well, we'll come back at you with that then later.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify one thing. Pauline called it a quadplex, like if you had 2 duplexes on one lot that were separate from each other, that is not, if they're not contiguous, is the way the code reads, then you don't have to do accessibility. So you could have a 3-unit structure and a separate one, and that's 4 units, which I think you guys would call quadplex, but we wouldn't call that a contiguous 4 units, so it doesn't need to meet accessibility. Okay.
Thank you.
Not accessibility, but you do have to do sprinklers, correct?
It's one structure that is over 3 units. If it pushes you into the commercial code, then you need sprinklers.
But with the example, I think you just use with like a duplex and then another duplex, you don't?
No, you don't.
Okay, thank you.
That's two family dwellings, each with its own permit. If we run out of questions, okay, I can go back to the presentation. Oh, we lost the whole thing. Do we want to take a break? We got another. Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break just to get the thing going again, and we'll see you in a few. All right, well, hopefully everybody online can hear us. We were getting some online questions too. I think what I would like to do is probably just keep doing the presentation until 11, and then we'll leave the last hour for questions and online questions and whatnot. So I will start this up again. Hopefully well, we're not taking questions, so Pauline doesn't have to be here. Yeah. So, okay, this is a situation where each of those is a dwelling unit. And what we would allow in this situation, since they're on top of each other, no property line, this is a 4-unit, which planning code calls quadplex, but this is an apartment to us in building. So there's no way to do a townhouse separation, so all you can do is commercial code. The next one. So now if you put a property line down the middle of it, this is means you only have a 2 dwelling unit on each side of it, which as long as you are considered structurally independent, that's now 2 0 lot line duplexes, which is allowed to be done in the residential code. It's difficult to build because you're going to have to have completely separate, like that building could go away and the other one will still have its 1 hour firewall there. So go ahead to the next one. 2 family dwelling separations, which are also referred to as ADUs and duplexes, and that's if the 2 family dwelling is, or if the ADU is connected, attached. So what it says a 2 family dwelling needs is a 1 hour wall. It tested in those 3 different scenarios, or those 3 different options of approvals for that type of wall. Most of the time you're going to see a UL listed assembly. The building code, they're saying out of the commercial code 7033, they have some prescriptive walls that don't have a UL listing in there that we accept too. So as long as it follows the prescriptive detail for a 1 hour wall. Same thing, fire resisted floor rated assemblies. It talks about the continuity of them. So this is where it says they need to be tight to the exterior wall. Somebody had a question earlier about that, the cantilever. It doesn't need to extend out to the cantilever. It only needs to where the 2 units are touching, basically. I think that's it. So the 3023 is the 2 family dwelling separation section. There are some exceptions to it. I think I talk about them later. One of them sprinklers, which I don't ever see. And the other one is the, it comes up a little bit later, but it's not requiring the 1 hour wall to extend through the attic. It's when you can rate the ceiling. So, and I put on there a couple of things to note. The difference between this and a townhouse is that the firewall doesn't need to extend all the way through the exterior wall like it does in a townhouse, where that makes sense. You could have 2 studs that are on either side of the wall, and basically a fire would only have to go through the exterior wall gypsum to get around the fire, but that's acceptable in 2 family dwellings, but not in the townhouse code. You need a full firewall through it. So, and there are no wrap back requirements on 2 family dwellings, which you'll see a lot of people, these aren't in townhouses either. On the walls, there's no, that's commercial code typically. By wrap back, I mean like the wall perpendicular to the property line doesn't have any requirements on it. And no 4-foot rated sheathing. That's what you'll see in commercial code and in townhouses is the no penetrations and the fire rated sheathing for 4 feet back from the property line. So this is a typical 2 family dwelling unit separation. So the red line is the 1 hour rating. And you'll see that it doesn't go through the crawl space. So next one. This is the definition, I think the 2 slides back definition. It says that the 1 hour separation between the dwelling units needs to extend from the lowest floor to the roof sheeting. So in this situation, I kind of tried to draw that there was like a post and beam floor that you wouldn't need to continue that down and have a footing and all that on a 2 family dwelling ADU situation. And then the crawl space wall does need to be rated, if that makes sense. And then the attic wall. So like unit 2, between itself and the attic of unit 1 still needs the 1 hour wall. These are the two exceptions to the 1 hour walls. Exception 1 is fire sprinkler, that you can knock it down to a half-hour rated wall. Exception 2, this is where it says if you have a layer of 5/8 gypsum across the whole top floor, that all you need between them is draft stop in the attic. And I actually, just putting this presentation together, realized they changed the draft stopping requirements in this last code. Now it's down to only 2 options, which is plywood or gypsum. It does say or equivalent or something, but they used to spec out a whole bunch of things like insulation, like mineral wool insulation, and I think metal or something, but now they just say those 2. So this is that situation. So again, it doesn't have to go through the crawl space. The wall between the 2 still needs to be a 1 hour wall, but now all you need on that lid is 5/8 gypsum and 5H type X gypsum, and then all you need on the, I guess the arrows are going to start popping up as you go forward. But so the next one, that lid just needs to be 5H type X gypsum, and then the next one is the draft stopping. So it is, I don't have it in front of me. I think it's 3/8 gypsum or 1/2 inch plywood, or it might be the reverse of that. But so if you stick with 1/2 inch, either gyp or plywood, that meets it.
One other complication with that 1 hour fire rated lid might be HVAC ducts and recessed light fixtures, things of that nature that would breach the fire rated ceiling. So something to be aware of, right?
I don't think there's a requirement on that. I think as long as you have the lid, you can penetrate it all you want.
If it was required to be a 1 hour fire rated horizontal assembly,
It's not. It's just
Oh,
the,
it
it's
just
just the,
requires the sheetrock.
this is the exception to running the firewall up through the attic,
right? So
that you can just do the lid in 5/8 type X.
it doesn't say that it needs to be 1 hour fire rated. It just says, okay, then you're right.
So supporting construction. What was I going to say about the last one? Can you go back to that? Sorry, I forgot it. There was something I know that always comes up on that. So supporting construction for, this is the next section. So if you have the separation is a stacked unit and you have a 1 hour floor ceiling assembly, then the supporting structure can't be any less than the 1 hour. And there's some question as to, like if it's an exterior wall that's not the bearing wall of the stuff, but that's still supporting that diaphragm. So if it's an interior non-bearing wall, down below, like if you had garages with separated with a non-bearing wall in between them, that doesn't need to be 1 hour rated. So, okay. So this is a typical situation that we see where somebody takes that, your garage and dwelling ranch house, and they cut off the roof of above the garage and they put this ADU on there. So what I'm kind of indicating there with the green wall is that's a 1 hour rated wall assembly, but there are no penetration requirements on that. So you can have windows, you can have the garage door. It's just the typical 1 hour wall is going to be exterior rated gypsum and gypsum on the inside face. We'll get you a 1 hour wall. So, and then the red line, that's the 1 hour floor ceiling assembly. And then the red line between the attic and is a 1 hour wall between in that section. And then those 2 red lines need to be supported by 1 hour construction, which in that situation, the wall there with the garage does that. So this is section 3026, which talks about the separation between the garage and the dwelling, which is very confusing to people that they have a garage and they're putting the ADU above. The ADU kind of supersedes this section, which just says that you need 5/8 on the lid if there's habitable space above the garage. So I don't think we're going to worry about having it on the lid if you have that 1 hour separation from the dwelling above. But this table does talk about if it's just a garage and the unit above is not a dwelling unit, like a separate dwelling unit, it could just be living space that's attached to the house. Then you need a 5/8 lid and the walls need to be gypped with 1/2 inch gyp. And then just the penetration requirements are basically that the openings have a rated door and any penetrations of ductwork and stuff is going to be metal. So you can only have metal ductwork in the garage. You can't have flex duct. So townhouse separations. We can go to the next slide. So there are 4 types of firewalls allowed to separate townhouses. The 2 1-hour fire resistant walls is two kind of distinct firewalls, which typically this is going to be 4 layers of gypsum with 2 stud walls. And to build that, you usually lay it down and have the inspection come out and see the inside layers built, and then they'll tip that up and then build the house, you know, do all the MEPs and the other part of the construction, and then we'll do the other firewall side. So it tends to be a slower process, and there's penetration requirements for, well, I don't think they're as bad for that one, but we just don't see this type of firewall as often in townhouses these days because of the construction feasibility of it. A modified 2-hour firewall, this is the wall that's shared by both sides of the townhouse. It's not structurally independent. And they say plumbing's not allowed, but then in a later section, I guess it's this code, they did clear it up and they said, unless you use the provisions of 302421, which kind of, you're framing out the plumbing in the wall with another layer of gypsum. So it kind of fire blocks it from the, oh, that's what I was going to talk about. The draft stopping in the attic of the duplexes, that it gets synonymous with fire blocking. People seem to think that draft stopping and fire blocking are the same, but they're not. Draft stopping is pretty rare. It's either that situation there, or it's if somebody has like open web trusses and has a huge floor. And in commercial, we see it too. But if you have these bigger houses that do open web trusses may have a space, communicating space in the floor cavity that's over 1,000 square feet, and then you'll need draft stopping in there. But it's not as restrictive as fire blocking. So, thank you. We can go to the next one. So the third type, a common 2-hour wall. This is where it says if there's not a real property line that you can just use a 2-hour rated wall, which that, if you're going to design townhouses, I wouldn't do this if you're going to do a 458 separation because they're not going to be independent and whatnot. But it allows a common 2-hour firewall is usually going to be like a 2x6 wall with 2 layers of gyp on each side, but it won't meet the modified requirement for sound and fire transfer. The next slides will be the details of modified 2-hour walls. And the other one is just a listed assembly. This is kind of what we're seeing with Polish, I believe, is they have a listed assembly of 1-inch shaft liner, 2 layers of 1-inch shaft liner that's on the inside. And I'll talk about that one a little bit too. It has a lot of benefits to it. So next slide. So this is the first modified No, this is the two 1-hour firewalls perpendicular to the property line. So they don't really say what that means, that perpendicular. They're talking about the framing of the trusses and the joists are perpendicular to the firewall. So in this situation, you can see that that's how the trusses are coming in, is they're bearing on that. So this is two independent walls, you can see. And one of the sticking points that comes up here is how you fire block that floor assembly. In this case, you can see there's a layer of gypsum running up the inside of both of those. So what it equates to, though, is that you're going to need 6 layers for the whole assembly of either 2x blocking or gypsum. So in this case, there's 2 layers on the inside, and then there's 4 blocks altogether. If you can see that, I think the next slide might be a blow up of that. Yeah. So you can see that the 2 layers of gyp running up the inside face there. You are allowed to go across the top of it with plywood. And then they show fire blocking in there, but if you went across the top of it with plywood, you wouldn't have to do that. So next slide. Oh, this is the parallel. So now the trusses and joists are parallel to the property line. Same thing. It's 2 1-hour walls. You can see how the firewall goes up through the attic there. There's 4 layers total of 5/8 gyp. I did ask the state about this. That's why I redlined the slide, because they messed up and said it was 1/2 inch, and that didn't really make sense. So I asked them what the intent was there, and they said that they're going to come out with an addendum that's 5/8. So but basically, there's 4 layers of 5/8 in the wall framing, and the same thing in the attic. And then the blow up there of the floor framing, I think that, yeah, that's the same. It's 2 layers of 5/8 on the inside, and then 4 blocks total. So that gets you 2 1-hour walls, basically. Next one. I should talk about the fire rated sheathing too. It's the same on this one as the other 2. So if you look at the top there, the one on the left says no openings allowed, fire retardant sheathing, and that's for the first 4 feet measured that way. So it's not technically 4 foot of plywood, which we do see, but people don't typically build with the truss perpendicular anyways. So, but the way the 4 foot is measured, it's from the property line, not along the sheathing of the roof there. So the left one, option A, is saying that fire retardant sheathing and no openings for the first 4 feet, and the lid of the ceiling is just regular 1/2 inch gyp. The other option is to go 2 layers of 5/8 across the whole lid of the building, and then you don't have to have fire rated sheathings, and still no openings allowed in that first 4 feet though. So, and then also this is the modified 2-hour wall. So that's the other type of wall. And on this one, you can see that, and this one is pretty popular, but it is a lot more difficult to build. And the reason why is they always put the gypsum on last on this, and after everything's framed, and it makes it difficult to extend it through the floor framing. You'll have the stair jacks sticking into that. You'll have drop ceilings, things like that. And all the penetrations need to be rated. So you have electrical boxes along there, which, if they're back to back, that's a problem. They can only be 16 square inches, or else then you're gonna have to frame out the wall or spur it out. And then modifieds don't allow plumbing in the wall unless you basically wrap them in gypsum also. So, and it's logistically, it's harder to build. But it looks like the cheapest option when you're designing it, so. Yeah, so the question was, if you're gonna put a cricket on there, I don't think I have a slide with that, but what they say is if the cricket measures more than 30 inches tall, then you have to extend that firewall up through it, and then the sheeting of the cricket will be fire rated. And then the underside won't. If it's less than that, then you can have an unrated cricket, and you do the sheathing up like that, the fire rating going up. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't see this built this way very often. So, all right, next slide. Oh, this is the 6 layers, and since they don't have the gypsum layer running up the inside like the 2 1-hour firewalls, and the fact that the fire rating comes from those 2 on the exterior, you don't have that inside the stud base. So you could, in this situation, frame up a stud wall, a small cripple wall, and then put 2 layers, which would be just kind of extending your firewall up through, or you're going to need to do 3 layers on each side of solid blocking. Next one. This is it's the same, isn't it? Perpendicular. Now let's go to the next one. Yeah, here we go. Parallel. So this one's pretty common. This one you can see where the 2 layers go up through the attic on each side. No requirements on the lid if you're using option A. You can still use the same option B of doing the whole lid of that story in 2 layers of 5H gyp, and then you don't have to have fire rated roof sheathing. And same thing, no openings allowed. So that's going to be your roof jacks, your ridge vent. That's the one we see all the time is ridge vent. They just you're ridge venting a house, so you do it all the way across, but you can't do it within 4 feet because that's an opening in the roof. The one thing to consider, especially if you're going to jam townhouses close together and then use ridge vent, is that you're probably not going to get enough ventilation because you have to cut it off 4 feet from the walls. So you're going to want like E vents and possibly mushroom vents or something up near the top to get the required ventilation. Okay, so this is that 4th option. That's an engineered wall that I was talking about, and this is 2 layers of shaft liner. The benefit of this one is the firewall is its own deal by itself in there. So that gypsum on this side of the wall doesn't really matter at all. So you can penetrate it all you want. You can run the, you can have all your electrical boxes. They don't even have to be rated. You can, they'd be back to back, but you wouldn't even know because there's 2 inches of gypsum between them. Trying to think of the other benefits, the stair jacks and the floor framing and those things. Like you can see that they run the continuous shaft liner all the way up. So your floor framing intersections don't matter. Your truss intersections don't really matter because they're just going to bear on this wall or they're going to run alongside of it. So this is more expensive and a little difficult to install because 1-inch gypsum is really heavy. But it is once you get it down, I think it goes a lot faster because it doesn't have the issues of the inspector coming in and saying, oh, you penetrated all this and this, you need to double up this and all these fire requirements. So next one. Continuity of firewalls on townhouses. This is what I was talking about where it needs to, this one says it needs to go all the way from the foundation, all the way through the roof. And it also has to go, so extend the full length of the wall or the assembly, meaning it does need to go to the face of the wall sheathing. I don't want to get into there's front porch covers and decks and other things that can get kind of hairy, and I don't have enough time to cover all of that today, so I won't talk about the separation. But like if you do put a a garage along the firewall or the, like a shed behind it, that firewall, if it's attached, needs to extend on through. So, next one. This is about the most complicated thing ever. I've tried to make drawings of how to do it, and it just gets more and more confusing. But you've got 4 situations here where the roof framing is perpendicular or parallel to the property line, and then if eave ventilation is allowed or not, and if you need the 1 hour rated wrap back on it. So yeah, it's 11 o'clock. I don't think I want to get into this one. We could talk for hours about this. So I think we'll open it up to questions. So yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so Karen asked, can accessory structures not ADUs be allowed on a middle land division lot?
Yes, I think so. Like a garage or a shed.
Do they, if they're permittable, does it come into the lot coverage requirements?
You would look at lot coverage when you look at the middle housing on the parent site in the beginning.
But like, are accessory structures included in lot coverage?
Yes.
So
And one thing to know about, not to dive too much into Senate Bill 458, but let's use a quadplex for an example. And you go put the quadplex on the lot and then you go through the land division. So now each unit's on their own lot. In the future, if one of those homeowners wants to add on to their unit or put a new accessory structure like another garage or something, you look at lot coverage for all 4 units together. So you will always go back to the original middle housing that's on there and look at lot coverage that way. So let's say property owner number 4 comes in and they add on and they max out that lot coverage for the entire parent site. Property owner number 3 can never come in and add on to their house because the quadplex is now at the maximum. And that is from the state.
So don't throw darts at you is what you're saying?
We want to be first.
All right, Steve Wells asked, many neighborhood CCNRs and HOAs are written in a way that makes 2001 and 458 impossible to implement, and many HOAs are revising existing documents to block 2001 and 458. I had heard the new state laws seek to override these CCNR HOAs restrictions. Is that true, or can you speak to this issue?
I'm going to, at a very high level, speak to the issue. I would encourage them to consult their own legal advice. The House Bill 2001 and Senate Bill 458, any new CCNRs cannot prohibit middle housing. If they were in existence before, I believe it was January 1st, maybe it was July or January 1st, like 2021. I'll have to double check the date. Pre-existing CCNRs that prohibit like ADUs or duplexes can continue. Any new CCNRs cannot prohibit middle housing or ADUs on a lot. And I am not familiar with what the state is looking at for overriding CCNRs. And the city does not regulate anybody's CCNRs.
Can they modify those pre-existing CCNRs? I think that's the caveat to what that question was.
Consult your own attorney.
Okay, I didn't think so as well. But.
Next question, sorry if you already answered this. Townhome question, can a townhome have an attached ADU?
No. So it could have a townhome separation and then it's just another dwelling unit. But the townhome definition says single dwelling units separated by the firewall. So an ADU is another dwelling unit.
And from planning perspective, you can have an ADU with a townhome.
So that's a double no.
Planning doesn't care if it's attached or detached.
Right.
I can't run faster than that.
Senate Bill 458 deals with new construction. Is there any chance that it could extend to existing units, say an existing triplex or fourplex, if they could be retrofitted to add an adequate firewall and individual water sewer hookups?
Yes, so in the Bend Development Code, we give you 3 options to apply for Senate Bill 458. One is if you have an existing triplexes in that example, you can come in and convert that into, go through the Senate Bill 458 process. You would definitely need that letter from that licensed architect saying how that unit, those new units will comply with the Oregon Residential Specialty Code and go through the building permit process. Another one is if someone already got approved for a triplex, has an active building permit, they can come in and then do the Senate Bill 458. Or probably the cleanest way is if you just have a vacant piece of property and you come in concurrently and apply for middle housing and then the land division. So there's 3 options.
Perfect.
The sticky point about that is like if you have an existing fourplex, it's probably a commercial. And if you're going to go 458, then it says it needs to meet the residential code. So you're probably going to have to put a bunch of townhouse separations or something in there.
And I think the utilities, we did one pre-app looking at an existing triplex, or maybe it was a duplex, but the utilities got really funky on how to separate them because the way it was originally built and where the utilities are located in the walls and the firewalls.
Yeah, so
I remember that example was
the
very.
commercial law will allow you to feed, through each of the structures and share utilities and share meters and shut off valves, all those things. And you can't do that in the separation you're talking about and meet the residential code. So, yeah.
And when we were talking about parking, Teresa asked if the required parking you are discussing is just Bend requirements or is this state guided?
So each city went through their own House Bill 2001 process. And if you're over 25,000 in population and came up with their own parking requirements, but each city either had to comply with the House Bill 2001 model code or the adopted OARs. And even in all cases, the parking is significantly reduced for ADUs, duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. And I also want to bring attention that a new bill just passed, and I'm probably going to get it wrong. It's like the Climate Friendly Equitable Action Plan, something like that. It goes into effect January 1st. And even if we're not going to put it in the Bend Development Code, it is still required. There is significant parking reductions that will start January 1st. Multifamily will be reduced down to 1 per unit. And then there's a list of uses that will be no minimum requirements starting January 1st, including any dwelling unit that is under 750 square feet. So it may not reside in the Bend Development Code because it's just got adopted. There's not enough time really to do the code amendments, but regardless, it will be in effect starting January 1st. And if people listening are interested in parking reductions, this bill requires by July 1st further reductions, and the City Council will hold a work session in the next couple months to review 3 different options for parking reductions, one being no minimum parking requirements citywide for every use. And this is coming again from the state. Sorry.
Should have worn my sneakers.
Pauline, I wanted to ask you about we had done the pre-app for the cottage development that was a 40-unit development, and we were interested in using 458 to speed up the land division process. And at that time, you had said that there was like a weird thing in there where we had to have our houses, all the houses had to be framed before we got the CO for the first house. Is that still?
That is still. Yeah.
And would we be able to phase it so that?
Not the way the code is written.
Okay, so there are 40 houses, basically, if we finished one house, we'd have to have all 39 of the other houses framed.
Right, so I would just encourage you to go through the regular land division process. And all that means is just a little bit more time in the review process.
Right.
But then you can phase it all any way you want.
Got it, thank you.
Lights. All right. Okay.
The side of an old permitted garage is less than 3 feet from, I don't know what PL/alley is. Perfect, thank you. Can attic of the garage be converted to an ADU?
Not without fire rating that wall that's 2 feet or less than 3 feet from the property line.
And from planning's perspective, that 3-foot side yard setback is considered non-conforming because typically in most residential districts, it would be a 5-foot side yard setback. I would encourage them to call the planning department and talk to them about whether or not they can expand up, because they're not increasing the non-conformity. They're not going any closer, but they are adding on. And I don't know the exact details on that, but I think it's possible, but I would definitely contact the planning department.
That's it? All right. We got any more? Or? Okay, well, great. Thanks for coming, everybody.